Hi, folks. Welcome back to the Thrive and Aligned Healing Podcast. This is episode 164, and we're going to talk today about health goals and lifestyle changes and how they're a little bit different, but how we build on one another. I wanted to talk about this because I've had a couple of folks who've come in who've had a little bit of a setback in their health picture. And they had accomplished their goals of lowering their liver enzymes, lowering their A1C, losing weight a little while ago, and didn't stick with some of those changes long term. So they came back to me really kind of frustrated and disheartened because their doctor's recommending that they go back on the medication they'd worked so hard to get off of, and that their A1C has backslid a little bit. So we wanted to get on today and talk a little bit about the difference between achieving our health goals and creating lifestyle changes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that this is like, just a different in mindset, right? Like when we are goal focused and in the situation you're talking about, it's kind of like problem driven, solution focused.
Yeah.
Like the problem of I don't want to be on these meds is driving the behavior change, right? And then we find the solution and we hit that like apex of like, I've reached my goal, right? And then that's kind of like that's the whole problem was driving the motivation and we resolved it. So now the motivation dips, right?
Mhm.
And we're like in this place of where we're just going to revert back because we didn't change our mindset and we didn't change our mindset. So therefore behaviors aren't necessarily long-term changed, right? So then you just see this like you're going to revert back to whatever is most efficient and requires the least amount of energy.
Exactly. I think that there's a lot of fuel in that motivation when we're trying to achieve those goals, right? Especially when it comes to things that are tangible and quantifiable, right?
Mhm.
So like labs, weight, A1C, right? Even energy to a certain extent. Um, and so we use that motivation to like accomplish those things.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes during that journey of accomplishing those goals, if we don't change the mindset, if we don't look at um, the the motivation or like our why, um, we're trying to achieve those health goals, then it's not a long lasting or long standing result for folks. Now they prove to themselves they can do it, right? Like prove to myself I wanted to lose 30 pounds, I lost 30 pounds or 50 pounds or 100, whatever.
Mhm.
But then, yeah, if they don't integrate those changes or they don't integrate a different mindset, it makes it challenging, that it's not a lasting result. Yeah.
Right. And I think because nothing's lasting. Like we live in an ever-changing universe, right? And we live in an
Yes.
ever-changing body. Like
Yeah.
there's never going to be like what is there in life that's like I did this one time, one thing, solve the problem for the rest of my life. Like that it doesn't exist.
It doesn't happen, right? We would like it to happen.
Yeah.
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 And sometimes the challenge is when we have a tangible goal like that, right? Like I'm going to use the A1C, and we're trying to move our A1C out of a diabetic or a pre-diabetic state, and we have a specific goal. So we will take changes, right? Oftentimes diet changes,
Uh-huh.
and they can be very restrictive in a short amount of time to make that happen quickly. Okay.
Yep.
So then when we come from a place of restriction and we don't work on our mindset and learning the tools in order to change that A1C in a healthy, sustainable way, it's inevitable that things are going to bounce back. Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're using the fuel of I call it like a hot burning fuel. Like gasoline is a very combustible fuel, right? Like you throw gas on a fire and it like blazes up, right? And it, like it's hot and it burns us, etc. Like when we choose fast, like I just want the problem as the motivation. You're using gas as a fuel source.
Yeah.
It's non-sustainable, right? So like, yeah, you're gonna like make all these, and I see like from working in the fitness industry for so long, it's like people will like overhaul like everything, right? And make a ton of changes and like go on very restrictive diets, like you talked about,
Yeah.
and like have very perfectionistic thinking. And they'll achieve that goal, but you always like I can guarantee when I used to have athletes or clients, I'm like, I'm gonna see this person in 6 months and they're gonna have gained 15 to 20 of them pounds that they lost back. These non-sustainable behavior patterns,
Yeah.
and they're fueled by a non-sustainable fuel source, right? Like we have to, like if I want change, like I can either invest in short-term change and I'm going to see it circle back to where I started, or I can invest in long-term change and invest in a more longer sustainable fuel source. And
Right.
that's going to be like more of that big picture. Like I want a healthy body because I want to have a higher quality life for the whole entirety length of my life. And that's going to be a different mindset and different behavioral patterns.
Exactly. Because it's a difference of that, say that fast, right? Like gasoline burning fuel, it may last a couple of months, right? Might last like 6 months for some people. They're gonna
Mm-hmm.
do it quick, right? Like we want quick results. We've kind of been trained as part of I think also part of our mindset that we want fast results, right? But the challenge is that when we're looking for optimal health and we're looking for a better quality of life, it's not just the next 3 months, 6 months. Those can be very foundational in how we change our lifestyle, but we're looking 5, 10, 15, 20, right? 40 years down the road for some folks. That's what we're looking for, right? It's like, okay, we get our labs every 3 months, every year. Seeing those changes is helpful. But when we want our body to be optimal, it's not just about, changing those numbers. It's understanding how we got them to change.
Yeah. And understanding how we got them to change and making decisions like, if I want these numbers to change and this is how I got them to change, am I willing to sustain this for the rest of my life?
Yes.
And
Yeah,
if I'm not willing to sustain, then I need to find a different way of achieving those numbers that is more sustainable for me.
exactly. Yeah. And there's always multiple ways to do anything. Right? I tell this to people all the time is that we find because we're looking for that lifestyle right changes. So we find ways of things that will incorporate into what you do now, right? To create healthier habits. So that they're sustainable or they're something that you want to continue to choose to do instead of coming from this place of like um I have to do this or right or like of restriction or trying to control things, control our diet, control our situation instead of working with what we have in order to achieve those long-term um changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, I absolutely get it. Humans don't want to change. They don't want to, we are wired not to like really want to change because it requires so much energy, right? So
Yeah.
we won't change until it's painful enough that it's too painful to stay the same. Right. And I know a lot of people, like, let's just say your A1C, like they're not going to change until they're looking down the barrel of like having to be on meds that they don't want to be on, or they're looking down the barrel of having to pay for those meds that they don't want to be on. And then, right, then they're motivated to change. But it's like, okay, like, cool, let's use this motivation, but let's look at this like we can either make short changes that you won't sustain and just know and accept the reality of this is that this is going to be a cycle from here on out where you make behavioral changes, you get your numbers where you want, you go back to the way you were living, they go back up, and then we start over again,
Right.
right? Or we look at it from like, okay, do we want to do this a sustainable lifetime? Like, I want to get them down once from here on, like from now on. And what does that sustainable changes look like for me?
Yeah. I think it's very important to distinguish that because, yeah, sometimes when people are thinking of like the changes that they want to make, they're not thinking a year, 2 years out. They're not thinking, like 3 or 4 years out. They're thinking, oh, this is an immediate problem. I need an immediate solution.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Um, and that's a very different space than if you're, yeah, looking long term and trying to figure out how to uh sustain, yeah, a healthier body.
Yeah. And I think maybe like us as practitioners, you as a physician, me as a coach, I think we have to just be more willing to just like kind of be like that, like blatant honest. Like, cool, what do you want? You want fast turnaround? Awesome. Let me just tell you that like fast turnaround will mean you will get there, but also this is you won't change long-term behavior patterns. And we're gonna come back and have this conversation again every 6 months. Totally cool. That's what you want to do. I will take that journey with you. Or we can get to take the journey of you want long-term change, you want lifetime change. It's gonna be a little bit like we're gonna have to make sustainable behavior long-term patterns, which is gonna take a little bit more time. Like, what journey do you want to take?
Right. That's very true. I think it's been a little bit different because I'm always thinking long term, and I realize that some of my patients are not. So they're like, no, I want solutions to get this down quickly so I can get my doctor off my back. So I don't have to, yeah, take this medication that they're recommending, or I don't, have to do something. I want to do something else instead.
Mhm.
And so it's a very different conversation um than I am used to, because used to I mean, we're working towards optimal health, right? So that means long term, that means where are we going to be, in 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years down the line.
Mhm.
But I'm recognizing that not everybody's there. Not everybody wants that. Yeah.
Yeah, I assuming you're starting to probably see an influx of symptom management people that are tired of the symptom management options and want different options, like start flooding into your practice.
Yeah. Which I I always prefer a root cause approach because it makes more sense to me, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
also a long-term approach, but if yeah, I have to be a little bit more wary about having that conversation of what their expectations are. They're looking for a short term, like fix, if you will. Or is it no, I want to make changes, long term. I don't want to have to revisit this um problem, right? Or revisit this situation again, 6 months, a year down the line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also have seen, I think this still kind of plays into this idea, is that um I've seen this in a couple of folks recently who, when they've achieved their goals specifically around weight loss, right, where they like dropped 50 pounds, and they proved to themselves they could do it, right? Um, but that was several years ago, and now they're in a situation they want to lose weight again. And so they know that they can do it, but they had such a bad experience when they were so restrictive at like achieving that short-term goal, that they have to overcome that hurdle to get into a space where they can start losing weight again. Because they think the only way they can do it is to, do it the way they've done it in the past. Because
Mhm.
they proved themselves they could do it, but they didn't eat anything, right? Like they were
Right.
severely restricted.
Right.
uh, and so then that now influences where they are in their journey and how they want to make changes now.
Yeah, and I think definitely diet culture has created that mindset for people.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so what advice would you have to people to help them like start to recognize where their mindset is and how to change or how to start exploring into long-term lifestyle changes and optimal health?
Well, let's just use like optimal health. I think like the first like awareness, like I think we don't like put as much value on awareness as like it should have. Like awareness is like the first key foundational step. And then from there, like once we have awareness is like I like to call them like red flags, like placing little red flags in my brain. So then I know when I see that red flag, like, oh, like this is something I got to pay attention to. And for wellness, like we're talking about, like red flags for me, especially like working with like in the personal training world for so long, was when there is a singular goal,
Mm.
right? Like I want to get my A1C down. Like we are so hyper focused on A1C down, or I want to lose weight. Like it's that singular goal. Like that should be a red flag
Okay.
because what's happening is like I'm being reactive
Mm.
and I'm trying to just like I'm hyper fixated on the problem and fixing the problem. Well, nothing is isolated in the human body, right? Like it's like, it's like it's a whole system, it's a systemic thing. So
Right.
when we try to like isolate, like I remember back in the day, and I haven't been in the fitness industry for a while, but like there was this ideology of like, what specific movements can I do to target this fat in this one area?
Oh,
Right?
that
Like,
makes
oh, I
sense.
have
Okay.
stomach fat. What can I do to get rid of the stomach fat? Right? Like, again, that's that singular focused goal. Like, it's reactivity. It's like, I've got to solve this problem. There isn't, like, that's not how the human body works, right? Like, you can't target a certain area to lose fat. The body loses fat in the way it needs to lose fat, and we can't direct it to certain areas, right?
Yeah.
So those for me is like the awareness. It's like the singular, like there's either I can either do short term and it's not sustainable behavior changes, or I can work on long term that are behavioral sustainable behavior changes. And am I hyper fixating on one single goal, or am I looking at the bigger picture? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Um, I think, yeah, no, that's perfect. I think when people can distinguish that, that's a good starting point because then they can start to recognize uh where they are in their journey, but where we could like alter things a little bit to help to address that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And it's just like there's no shame in it, right? Like
No.
we've just highly been programmed, right? Like conventional medicine has programmed us into symptom management mindset. Diet culture has programmed us into restriction, right? Focusing on like quick restriction wins, right? Like they're both symptom management. They're both programming us into reactivity, symptom management mindsets.
Yeah. Um that's very true. I think it's a little bit uh because we have that programming and because we have that influence, when people start to look for something different and they start to look for, like naturopathic medicine and wanting a different solution, it's hard to let go of some of that
Yeah.
programming, because now they're trying to kind of marry two different paradigms. And sometimes it doesn't, they don't marry as smoothly. Yeah.
Yeah, like I like examples, right? I'm like a visual learner. So when I was in energy efficiency auditing, right? Like now like old school way of like insulating your house was putting like fiberglass, like the insulation bats in, or like I can't even remember the name of like the ground up like newspaper and stuff. It'll come to me. Like, and you had to have ventilation in your attic, right? Like, so they had the little swirly birds, or they had like the ridge vents, right? Like, you had to have ventilation in the attic with that type of insulation. And now, like, now we have spray foam insulation, right? Which like encapsulates the attic into the whole home environment. And you can't have ventilation in the attic with spray foam. But what you see sometimes when you have a homeowner that's extremely like opinionated and vocal, or where you have like maybe a spray foam insulation that's not as well versed, is they're trying to marry the two. So I've gone into so many like several houses where they spray foamed it and they put attic ventilation in it. Like, now you're inviting the weather outside into your home, like inside of your home, and it like totally makes the spray foam insulation ineffective.
Right.
The spray foam insulation, you can't marry the two worlds. They are separate, and you just choose which path you want. And I see the same way of like going from conventional medicine into naturopathic medicine. It's like you choose your path, but like trying to marry these is going to create like, it's hard, and it creates confusion, and it creates this like push pull, right? It's like there's a place for this and there's a place for this, but we can't marry these two.
Right. It makes it it definitely makes it a challenge. Like sometimes paths, yeah, what can like dip into a little bit of both, conventional and naturopathic medicine. But when we went, I guess it depends on what their goals are, right? Or
Mhm.
like how they envision their health, and what the type of health that they want and that they're looking for. And that's their choice, right? Yeah. That's part of um the opportunity as individuals is to choose what we want our health to look like, right? And
Yeah.
what that means. And so um yeah, I like that. I liked um being able to recognize where our mindset is will help us, I feel like will help us um help us make that choice, right? Say, okay, am I choosing something that's short term, um, and that may not be very sustainable, but I, get to like achieve that goal, cross that finish line, mark that, off the list, or am I choosing to create a different picture for my health, something with long term, better quality of life, right? That optimal health and recognizing where that starts in our
Mhm.
mindset.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Um, anything else?
That's all I got.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.